What's up, fellow YouTubers? If you've happened to stumble upon this video, then you're sure to have seen the heaps of A6600 videos from all the cool hipster YouTubers that were invited by Sony to Montana for an exclusive first look at the all-new Sony A6600, where you see all this footage of this campfire, this cool cabin in the woods, these weird red rocks, and this dock that everyone seemed to film on. Oh look, there's Max rocking a sweet hat. What's up guys? So I just wanted to start off by saying I purchased this Sony A6600 from B&H Photo with the brand new 16 to 55 millimeter f2.8 lens. And I also want to say that I had it for a couple of days and I sent it back. So stick around as we go through the video. I'll kind of tell you a little bit later on why I sent it back. I didn't send it back because I don't like the camera. So just to get that out of the way, it's not that I didn't like it or anything, but I'll cover everything down the video and you'll understand at the end of the video. So to start off with all the pros about the camera, it's a great camera. Basically the size is awesome of the camera compared to like a full frame Sony A7 III or any of the bigger A7 full frame cameras. So two of the main reasons why I decided to buy the Sony A6600 is going to be the fact that it uses the same battery inside of the A7 III. So that's going to give you terrific battery life, as well as it added a little bit more ergonomic grip, made that grip just a little bit bigger than like the A6400. And the second reason would be IBIS, in-body image stabilization. So the A6600 got the same 5-axis in-body image stabilization that the Sony A7 III and the other A7 series has inside of it. So this is going to help with obviously any footage from being shaky, but also with photography being able to balance out those micro jitters that you have at slightly slower shutter speeds. So with those two factors mixed in with some of the newer autofocus features, I decided to give the camera a shot. So again, I purchased this camera setup on my own from B&H. It was about $2,500. It was pretty pricey for an APS-C camera. So that's one of the factors into why I decided not to keep it. But one of the other pros that I really like about the camera is just straight up the way it feels in your hands. It's not much smaller than the A7 III, but it is noticeably lighter and smaller in the hands. So that's something to keep in mind, that if you need extreme portability, this camera is going to be a little bit better than some of the full frame cameras for you. For me, portability is not really a big issue because the A7 III is just a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier, and for me, it just doesn't bother me at all to have just that little increase in size and weight. But that's definitely something to keep in mind for those of you out there who absolutely need the smallest, best working package that you can. So some of the specs here, you get a 24.2 megapixel sensor there. It's basically the same image sensor that's in the A6400 cameras. So if you already have an A6400 or you've used one, your image quality is going to be basically the same. The only difference is if you're shooting with slower shutter speeds, that IBIS may help you get that sharper image out of your camera. And obviously if you're taking video, it's just going to help stabilize that without the need of a gimbal. For a lot of things. Obviously a gimbal cannot be replaced with in-body image stabilization at this point, but it's better than nothing, and it's going to help a lot of vloggers. Speaking of vlogging, I'm going to go ahead and cut over to a clip that I did just in my backyard walking around giving it a test, so I'll let you check that out here. So yeah, this is on Program Auto, Picture Profile 1, optical steady shot, so it shouldn't be too shaky. I'm just kind of walking and holding the camera like I normally would. And yeah, so this looks pretty good. If you look at the camera, I can see it's got eye autofocus tracking me right now on my face. Give you guys just a real world test of vlogging and what it looks like on the A6600. I'm walking, not trying to do anything special with stabilization, trying not to look up at the screen but at the actual lens. So this is what it looks like and sounds like. For those of you who are interested in finding out what the onboard microphones sound like, it's kind of windy outside, so hopefully this sounds good. Okay, so that hopefully gives you an idea of the basic quality of what you're going to get out of the internal microphones. It's pretty much on par with what every camera has for internal microphones. It is what it is. Anybody who's serious about making videos though is probably going to want to purchase some kind of microphone. I tend to use the Rode Video Micro quite a bit for a lot of different things when I'm running and gunning. Just keep in mind that with that flip up screen, you're going to have to, this is basically going to sit right in the middle of the flip up screen. So you have to buy a little adapter that will move that off right to the side. So it'll just pop right on the side for you. out of the way. Pretty simple, cheap, easy fix. So for those of you who don't know, it does have the flip-up screen. That's nothing new. The 6400's been out for over a year, so I'm not gonna really touch base on that, but obviously it has a flip-up screen, so it's gonna help any of you vloggers out there. If you're holding the camera out in front of you, you're gonna be able to see what's in the frame. In my opinion, if you have a wide enough angle lens, basically anything 24 millimeter or wider, 24 millimeter on the full frame, 16 millimeter on APS-C. If you have a 16 APS-C millimeter wide lens, you're pretty much going to be in the camera at arm's distance out. This camera lens right here is set at 24 millimeters, just to let you know. It's a little bit further back than what my arm's reach would be, but again, I'm gonna be probably in the frame a little bit more than what you would if you just brought it 2 or 3 inches closer. So I'm filming on the A7 III right now, right in front of me at 24 millimeter focal length on a full frame. And like I said, I'm not worried about having to see the screen. I know I'm gonna be in focus for pretty much most of this video, if not all of it, with the exception of putting stuff in front of my face. Usually the camera does a good job at tracking that, which leads me into one of the next pros of the 6600 is you get that face tracking, face autofocus in video as well. So this is also not a new feature. It's been out on the 6400, but the 6600 also gets it. It's pretty neat to have. It's not essential in my opinion, because I do think that any of the A7 III line, A7R3, A7R4, those all have terrific autofocusing systems in there already. So again, not a noticeable difference in my opinion as far as quality goes. Maybe it gets a little bit sharper on the face than the A7 III, but I have to be honest with you, when I was using the vlog tests compared to any of my other A7 III YouTube videos, I truly do not see a substantial difference in autofocusing capabilities there. So it's kind of a pro. It's not really a con at all, but it's not really something that would make me want to buy that camera after using it over something like the A7 III or the A6400, or maybe even an A6500 if you have one of those cameras. It doesn't really make that much of a noticeable difference, just to be honest with you. And the other aggravating thing is there was one time when I'm holding the camera right in front of my face, my son was over here a little bit behind my shoulder, and it focused on him that was off towards the left side of the screen as opposed to my face. But it was a little bit aggravating to look at that because I'm dead front and center right there in a focusable spot on the lens, and yet it chose my son. So that's a struggle you may have if you're ever trying to film yourself and you have somebody next to you. It may not focus on you. If that doesn't bother you, great. I just had to mention it because it's going to happen. So again, bringing up the battery, the new battery is phenomenal. It's phenomenal in the A7 III, but in the A6600, you get a little bit of a smaller camera. You're gonna get a terrific battery life. Basically, unless you're taking over 2,000 photos in a day, you're probably not gonna kill that for most people going out for a day of shooting. Like when I first got the A7 III, I went to Disney and I took videos and photos all day long, and I was down at like 25% battery at the end of the day. You're gonna get terrific battery performance. Now, if you're shooting a wedding or something like that, you're definitely gonna kill the battery just because the shutter, the more the shutter is active, it's gonna kill that battery faster and faster. So obviously you'll probably wanna have a spare battery, but I feel confident that like if you were a wedding photographer, a videographer, 2 or 3 batteries at most is gonna be all you need. I have 3 of those Z batteries right now for my A7 III, and honestly, I've never come close to killing those. Just 2 batteries usually cuts it for me. Pretty traditional with the Sony cameras. On the A6600 and the A7 III, these SD cards go in kind of what I consider to be backwards, so the contacts face you. I would think they should go in that way, but not a big deal. If you're a Sony user, you're already familiar with that. A7 III has dual card slots. A6600 does not, so that's something to bear in mind. I do not consider that a con because of the size of the camera. It's not what I think Sony classifies as a professional grade camera, even though it can definitely be used to be used for gigs and make money. I mean, there are probably plenty of people out there who have made thousands of dollars already off of the A6600. So don't let that deter you. You could always get something to wirelessly transmit and save to like an external hard drive if you want. But in my opinion, I've been fortunate so far. Usually one SD card is going to be fine, but something to bear in mind for those of you. It could be a deal breaker. might not. I don't think it's a deal breaker. So I'll briefly mention the brand new 16 to 55 millimeter lens. So essentially it is going to be comparable to the Tamron 28 to 75, if you will, or a 24 to 70 on a full frame camera. It's a terrific lens. I really enjoyed shooting with the lens. I like getting the f2.8, so a little bit of a faster lens. It's going to help out in the low light situations. So with that being said, one of my biggest gripes is, unfortunately, I've had the A7 III for a year and a half, so I'm kind of comparing a crop sensor camera to a full frame sensor, which sometimes isn't really fair, but unfortunately the image quality that I'm used to out of the A7 III is just so much cleaner in lower light. And lower light doesn't mean without lights, it just means indoors. Like right now, I have a light right here pointing on my face. You know, anytime you're gonna film anything with any kind of movement, even as slow as I'm moving my hand right now, you pretty much have to shoot at a minimum shutter speed of about 1/160. And even at f2.8 inside at 1/160, you're gonna get most certainly an ISO of 1000 or higher in a room about lit like this. And basically, in my opinion, the noise or the grain that comes out of the A6600 at 1000 ISO and above becomes noticeable. And I'll pop a couple of pictures on the screen just to show you. It doesn't ruin the image. You gotta remember, not everybody is gonna crop in or zoom in on their phone or their computer to view a picture at like 1:1 ratio. They're gonna see the picture zoomed all the way out, and you're not gonna be able to go, oh, that's a very grainy, noisy picture. Some grain is perfectly acceptable. As a matter of fact, it's desirable for a lot of people. They like to add just a little bit of noise. So just keep in mind, in my opinion, anything, once it gets up to about ISO 600 in photos, it begins to become noisy. So if you're used to a full frame look and you're trying to compare a full frame sensor to a APS-C, it's not fair, it's not gonna compete. So that's one of the factors that determined for me to actually send that camera back. I'll get to the second and the most important reason here in just a bit. But back to the lens, the 16 to 55, again, it's gonna be comparable to like this Tamron 28 to 75 or 20, like Tamron has a weird focal distance, but usually like 24 to 70. It's a perfect go-to lens for just about everything. I pretty much always keep that lens mounted on this camera because for the majority of photography, this is gonna get the job done. You get a nice zoom out of it and you get wide enough to where you can step back a foot or two and get closer up shots. So, and at f2.8, obviously, you can stop that down and you can shoot in a little bit of a lower light. So that mixed with the IBIS turns the camera into something better, in my opinion, than the A6400, just because now you've got that stabilization to help keep those images sharp at slower shutter speeds. All right, guys, I just want to take a quick moment to open up a couple of photos here just to show you what I was talking about here with the Sony A6600 picture quality. All right, so this photo that I'm about to open, you can see here it's shot on the Sony A6600 at aperture of f2.8 over 1/200 of a second, ISO 2000. So we'll go ahead and open this up just so you can see. This is just a kind of a weird photo. I was standing outside, the sun was setting, so I took a picture kind of pointing into like where my little office is. So if we pop in here, you can see some grain here, some noticeable grain. This is not a bad photo though. I'm not going to complain about it. I just wanted to give you a visual of what I mean by it. Again, most people aren't going to be zooming in. They'll see this photo on the screen and just move on. They're not going to be doing this right here and continuing to crop in and in and in. So I just wanted to show you that one. Picture number 2 that I'm going to open up here. Again, we're shooting in RAW, full quality here, ISO 1000 at f2.8. So we'll open this one up, and it's just my son. He was on our fence, and he was just kind of like hanging out. So you can kind of see, you know, the photo's noticeably less sharp shooting at a higher ISO. Because you get that noise introduced into it. It's just not quite as good, but overall, still not a bad photo. If you're not zooming in at it, you can just take a look at it and see it's not bad. All right, getting into some of the lower ISO photos, these are where the camera truly shines at. So this is ISO 100, 1/2000 of a second at f2.8. Obviously in the middle of bright daylight. So if you zoom in here, it's pretty sweet. Again, this is at f2.8, so I think the focus area was somewhere in the center of the screen, probably right in here. These pictures are really what I want to show you, because I feel like these really showcase what the camera is capable of. So here we are with f4. 16 millimeters on a APS-C is going to be 24 millimeter full frame equivalent. But as you can see on this photo here, we'll open it up. So at f4, it's noticeably sharper all the way across the image, even zoomed in significantly. As you can see, as we go around here on the image, you get a pretty sharp image. So I'll show you again here, zoomed out. This camera does really good. Like I said, it's pretty darn sharp all the way across the image. If you look up at these trees and these leaves here, you can see that it's just sharp all the way across the board. All right, here's another example here. I'm showing you the specs on this one. Again, we're shooting at f4, ISO 100. Go ahead and open this up. As you can see, as we crop in here on the photo, it's still incredibly sharp everywhere. No noise anywhere. So again, anything really below like ISO 400, I think, is going to be just fine. You can actually see even the moon right here. It's kind of cool. ISO 400 and below, camera really shines, specifically at ISO 100. It's really when you get up to about 1,000 or higher on the ISO, to me, the camera starts to fall apart compared to a full frame. We'll do one more photo here. I think this was a bracket photo that I shot, so that just means I took 3 photos and then merged them together in Lightroom. But yeah, this says f2.8, 1/50th of a second, ISO 100. So I was out playing tennis, and the sunset was pretty awesome, as you can see. So here's what you're going to get with a bracketed photo. I'm pretty sure it was bracketed. Maybe it wasn't. Could have just been a single exposure. But either way, I wanted to showcase what you could get here. Again, if you can keep your shutter speed low and your ISO low, it's okay. You're going to get perfect picture quality, in my opinion. You know, definitely can't gripe there. Overall, I'd probably rate this image quality like 7 out of 10 coming out of the camera, not just that specific image, but just the image quality in general. I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. It's a phenomenal camera. Again, if you can keep your ISO basically 1,000 and below, really what I prefer, if I can keep it at about 400 and below, I think it's a great camera. So the photos that you saw were also taken obviously on the 16-55 on the A6600, and you know, I was pretty happy with it. If I did not have an A7 III already to compare it to, I would have gladly kept it, and I could still have gladly have kept it. But one major thing, the reason why I decided to get rid of that camera is the A7 III went on sale around the same time, sometime like November, around Thanksgiving, Black Friday. It was originally $19.98 and it went on sale for $17.98, so $200 off. So I purchased the A6600 and 16-55 millimeter lens for $24.96 exactly off of B&H. So I'm just going to round up to $2,500. So if you calculate an A7 III body at $17.98 and then the Tamron, a full frame Tamron 28-75 lens, that's going to come out to like $2,600, so about $150 more. And you're going to get the advantage of full frame lens and a full frame sensor camera. In my opinion, for what I do a little bit more photography than videography. About the only thing I do videos for is here on YouTube. I do photography on the side to make money, so the image quality there is more important to me than the video. And I say that if you're buying the A6600 primarily for video, then it's awesome. You're not going to notice that grain at the lower light levels like I was mentioning in photos. You're not going to notice them in video. So if your primary use is for video, don't hesitate, go for it. But keep in mind, if you're going to get that 16-55 lens, you're about $150 short of an A7 III. And like I said, you get the benefits of 2 SD card slots, full frame, way better low light performance. The only thing you lose is this camera's been out for a couple years now. A6600 has a newer processor in it, so the camera's a bit snappier. It boots up when you turn it on just a little bit faster. And just operating the camera, the autofocus is a bit snappier, which all I mean by that is it's a little faster. But again, this is not a slouch either. The A7 III has a terrific autofocusing system. You don't miss a whole lot. And usually when you do, it's your fault because you weren't set up and you were whipping the camera up fast, or maybe you turned it off and you just couldn't get it back on and up into position quickly. But for the most part, this camera does not miss a whole lot. Every camera is going to miss, but I get some really good images out of this camera without having to try very hard. Both cameras obviously have the same formats as far as ARW raw files. You get a ton of data that you can recover, lows and highs out of there. You can pull the highs down a bit. You can absolutely raise the shadows a ton in Lightroom and retrieve a lot of data out of both of the cameras. They're both phenomenal. So overall, the A6600 is a terrific camera. Don't let me saying that I returned it put you off of buying the camera. But just bear in mind, like I said, you can get the A7 III with the Tamron 28 to 75 for about $150 more. For me, that was the wiser decision. But if you need a smaller camera, slightly smaller, again, the A6600 is gonna win, and you do get a perfect ergonomic grip. It just felt so good in the hands, better than the A7 III in my opinion. It just felt really good. So you're definitely gonna win as far as ergonomics and weight go on the A6600. Much easier to mount on a smaller gimbal. I have the Weeble Lab and I don't have a problem mounting my Sony A7 III on there, but if you try to mount bigger lenses on there, they are not gonna balance on this gimbal. Whereas if you have the A6600, you're probably gonna have no problem with any of the current APS-C lineup of lenses as far as balancing and working with a smaller gimbal. Overall, terrific camera. I would gladly use it, but like I said, I sent mine back and I decided to purchase a second A7 III just because you know, that's my main camera. And I felt that it was more wise for me with photography over videography. Because again, both cameras basically shoot at the same frame rates. There's nothing really separating them. The Sony A7 III also gives you some different picture profiles that aren't available on the Sony A6600. But overall, it's a terrific camera. Don't hesitate to buy it. It's definitely worthwhile if you're already looking into it and you're trying to find somebody who's saying, well, should I get it or not? Well, now you have my opinion. I buy these cameras with my own money. I use these cameras on the side to make extra money for my family and to kind of hopefully pay off the investment of the gear. And I really enjoyed using both of them. So just keep that in mind. And you know, hopefully this video will help you out. If it did, make sure you leave a comment down below. Push the thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, hit the thumbs down twice. And as always, we'll see you guys in the next video.